The Millionaire CEO sat alone in the grand hotel lobby, the weight of his empire resting on his shoulders. To the world, Alexander Kane was untouchable, ruthless in business, brilliant in strategy, and cold in heart. People said he had everything: power, wealth, influence. But tonight, as the clock struck midnight, and the chandeliers cast long shadows, he had nothing but silence for company. Then, footsteps echoed. 3 little girls, no older than 6, walked up to him hand in hand. Identical faces, identical, curious eyes, identical smiles that carried a warmth he hadn't felt in years. They stopped right in front of him, their tiny palms opening to reveal a small silver heart charm. "This is yours," one whispered. "Our mommy said you dropped it a long time ago." And in that moment, Alexander's carefully built walls began to crack. The hotel lobby was drenched in golden light, chandeliers glittering like 1,000 diamonds. Wealthy guests passed by, whispering softly, their laughter echoing against marble floors. Yet, in the midst of all the opulence, Alexander Kane sat. In silence, he was the kind of man who seemed carved from stone. Sharp jawline, perfectly tailored suit, and eyes that had seen both triumph and betrayal. At 45, he had conquered industries, crushed rivals, and earned the title of the man who never lost. But in truth, he had lost more than he would ever admit. Nights like these reminded him when the boardrooms were empty, when the calls had stopped. When the world wasn't watching, he was completely alone. He leaned back in the velvet chair, sipping his scotch. The glass trembled slightly in his hand, though he didn't know if it was the drink or the memories that made him unsteady. Memories of a woman. The only woman who had ever dared to walk away from him. The one whose laughter still haunted his dreams. That was when he heard its soft footsteps, unhurried, small. He looked up, 3 little girls stood before him, identical, as though mirrored copies of each other. Their brown curls bounced against their shoulders, their cheeks flushed, pink from the cold outside. They wore simple dresses, matching white cardigans, and their eyes. Those wide, innocent eyes carried a strange familiarity that made his chest tighten. They didn't speak at first. They just looked at him, and for the first time in years, Alexander found himself speechless. Finally, one of them stepped forward, her tiny hand opening to reveal a silver heart-shaped pendant. The charm was small, slightly scratched, but unmistakable. His breath caught. It couldn't be. "This belongs to you," the little girl said softly. Alexander froze. That pendant, it was real. He remembered the night he had given it away, so many years ago. A night filled with promises he had failed to keep. His throat tightened. Where did you get this?" The second girl spoke now, her voice barely a whisper. "Our mommy gave it to us." "Your mommy?" His chest felt like it had been pierced. The third girl's eyes shimmered as she added, "She said, to find you." Alexander's heart raced. These girls' triplets couldn't be strangers. They carried a piece of him in their faces, in their mannerisms, even in the way they stood. He clenched his fists under the table, his carefully built composure cracking at the edges. Before he could ask more, the tallest of the 3 slipped the pendant onto the table. The silver caught the chandelier light, flashing like a beacon from the past. "She said you'd understand," the little girl whispered. Alexander's world tilted. The empire he had built, the power he wielded, it all meant nothing compared to the storm of realization crashing over him, because in that silver heart, and in the eyes of these 3 little girls, was the answer to a truth he had buried long ago. And he wasn't ready for it. Alexander's hand hovered above the silver heart, his reflection fractured in the polished metal. The triplets stood silently, their identical faces glowing with a mixture of innocence and purpose. They didn't fidget. They didn't look away. It was as though they understood the weight of what they were delivering, even though they were only children. The words stuck in his throat. "Your mother, where is she?" The 3 looked at each other, then pointed in unison toward the glass doors of the lobby. And then Alexander saw her. She stood just beyond the doors, framed by the night. Her coat clung to her figure, dark hair tumbling over her shoulders, strands stirred by the winter wind. For a moment, time collapsed, ears crumbled into dust. He knew her immediately. Isabella Hart. The one he had loved. The one he had lost. The one who had walked away without a goodbye. Alexander's breath hitched as she stepped inside. Her heels clicked against the marble floor, the sound sharp and deliberate. The lobby seemed to hush, the hum of conversations fading, as though even the wealthy patrons sensed something larger unfolding. Her eyes found his instantly. Not with hesitation, not with shyness. They locked onto his like a weapon she had sharpened. For years he rose slowly, the chair scraping behind him. "Isabella Alexander," she replied. Her voice was soft, yet carried an edge that made the triplets straighten like soldiers. For a long moment, they simply stared at each other. The years between them stretched and broke like glass. Finally, Alexander's voice cracked through the silence. "There, mine." Isabella's jaw tightened. "Do you even need to ask?" His chest constricted. He looked back at the three girls, Sophie, Sarah, and Serena. He would later learn their names, and every doubt evaporated. He didn't need a test, didn't need proof. He saw himself in them. In the stubborn way they stood, in the flicker of intelligence in their eyes. He turned back to Isabella. "Why didn't you tell me?" Her lips curved into something between sorrow and anger. "Because you chose your empire. Because you made it clear, in every word and action, that power mattered more than people. I wasn't going to raise 3 daughters waiting for a man who was married to his ambition." The words stabbed, but they were true. He remembered those years to well nights spent in boardrooms, phone calls in place of dinners, promises delayed until they disintegrated. He thought he had time. He thought love could wait, but Isabella hadn't waited. Alexander swallowed hard. "And all these years? You never." "I built a life for them," she cut in sharply, "a good one. Without your money. Without your name. I gave them love. Alexander. Something you could never give me." Her voice trembled on the last word, and for the briefest moment, the steel in her eyes softened. The girls looked between them, sensing the undercurrent though too young to understand its full depth. Finally, the boldest of the three, Sophie, spoke. "Mommy said you're important." Alexander crouched to meet their gaze, his heart hammering. She was wrong. The girls blinked. "I'm not important," he whispered. "You are." It was the first honest thing he'd said in years. When he stood again, Isabella was watching him with an unreadable expression. Her eyes glistened, though whether from anger or something else, he couldn't tell. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice low. She tilted her head. "That's the question. Alexander, what do you want?" The truth was heavy. He didn't want money. He didn't want deals. In this moment, all he wanted was time he had lost, time he could never get back, time he was terrified would slip through his fingers again if he didn't hold on. But before he could answer, Serena, quiet until now, reached up and slipped her small hand into his. "Don't be sad," she whispered. His breath caught. He looked down at her, then at the other two. Then at Isabella. For the first time in his adult life, Alexander Kane, the ruthless CEO who ruled boardrooms like kingdoms, felt utterly powerless. And yet, for the first time, he didn't mind. Alexander's hand trembled around Serena's tiny fingers. The warmth of her touch traveled straight to his chest, piercing through the walls he had spent decades building. Sophie and Sarah joined their sister, slipping their hands into his other palm as though they had known him forever. For the first time, the man who commanded skyscrapers and crushed competitors stood humbled by 3 little girls who carried his blood. Isabella watched silently, her expression unreadable. Her eyes, however, told the truth. This wasn't easy for her either. Alexander straightened, his voice barely steady. "I should have been there." "You weren't," Isabella replied sharply. "I know." He closed his eyes, guilt weighing him down. "But I can be now, if you'll let me." The girl's eyes widened, hope flickering like candlelight. But Isabella crossed her arms, her guard still raised. "You don't just walk back into there, lives because it suits you, Alexander. They're not a deal to be signed, they're children. My children. And they deserve consistency, not another broken promise." Her words struck deep. He had broken promises before, so many, to so many people. But this couldn't be another mistake. He turned to the triplets, kneeling so he could look them in the eye. "I don't know how to be a father," he admitted. "I've spent my life chasing money, thinking that's all that mattered. But you 3, his voice broke. "You matter more than all of it. If you let me, I'll spend the rest of my life proving it." Sophie tilted her head. "Even if we're noisy?" "Yes," Sarah giggled. "Even if we make a mess?" "Yes." Serena squeezed his hand. "Even if Mommy gets mad at you?" Alexander looked at Isabella, who met his gaze with fire and vulnerability all at once. His voice dropped. "Especially then." For a moment, silence hung heavy in the lobby. The world outside went on. Cars passed. Guests laughed. Glasses clinked, but inside, everything narrowed to this fragile circle of 4 girls and a man on his knees. Finally, Isabella sighed. "You don't get forgiveness overnight, Alexander. You don't get trust in a week. If you want to be in their lives, you fight for it every single day. You show up. No excuses, no deals. He nodded. Then that's what I'll do. Her eyes softened, ever so slightly. We'll see. The triplets beamed, tugging him toward the doors. Can we show him the park? Mommy. Please. Isabella hesitated, then nodded. Fine, the park. But only for a while. Outside, the night was cold, but Alexander barely felt it. The girls ran ahead, their laughter ringing like music. He followed slowly, walking beside Isabella. She glanced at him. You really think you can change? He didn't look away. I don't think. I know, because for the first time in my life, I want to. And as the silver heart pendant swung from Sophie's neck, glowing under the streetlights, Alexander Kane realized his greatest fortune wasn't in his empire. It was in the 3 little girls who had handed him back the heart he'd lost years ago. If this story touched your heart, imagine how many people out there need this reminder. Money can build empires, but only love builds families. Alexander thought he had everything until 3 little girls showed him what truly matters. If you believe in forgiveness, in second chances, and in the power of love stronger than wealth, then don't let this moment pass. Tap like, share this story with someone who needs hope, and comment below. Would you choose your empire or your family? Sometimes, one choice changes everything. Maybe even your life.